Semua pelajar langsung berteriak-teriak sehingga harus dipindahkan ke ruang kelas untuk ditenangkan.
What's up folks, it's me Jaren Lim, your Indonesian mental health advocate. Buat neurodialectikers yang orang Indo, jangan lupa kalau semua video-video gue itu subtitlenya tersedia dalam dua bahasa. Ada bahasa Inggris sama bahasa Indonesia. Jangan lupa dinyalain ya kalau butuh. Do I have a mental disorder? That's one of the most common questions that have always been asked by a lot of people. I remember taking this class called abnormal psychology when I was in college. A lot of students in that class started to question themselves. Do I have a mental disorder? One of my friends even thought that she had PPD or paranoid personality disorder because she would be extra vigilant when she is walking by herself at night. My other friend started to argue with me. He stated that everyone in this world must have some level of ADHD, and because no one is perfect, everyone has flaws, so everyone has mental disorders. So my question to you is, was it right that my friend really have PPD? Was it true that everyone has some sort of ADHD because no one is perfect? Is it true that everyone has some sort of mental illness? So apparently it is a myth. Huge myth. I'm gonna start with defining what abnormal means. The caveat here is that abnormality is still ill-defined even until now. While many definitions of abnormal has been proposed over the years, there is none that has won the total acceptance yet. One of the most prevalent criteria or definition of abnormality is the 4Ds, namely deviance, distress, dysfunction, and danger. In other words, psychiatric disorders must at least have some sort of deviance, distress, dysfunction, and /or danger to be called a disorder. Although not actually all disorders have all these in the diagnostic criteria. Some disorders, such as major depressive disorder, for example, only include distress and dysfunction in the criteria to be called a disorder instead of episode. Okay, let's start from defining what deviance means. Deviance can actually mean two things. The first one is that it deviates from the norms. Norms mean the aggregate responses of a standardized and representative group that are established for a test. In other words, the majority of the population that we consider as normal will fall into this range. And a more statistical definition, norm means within one standard deviation or sigma apart from the mean. Deviance, however, means it is at least one standard deviation or sigma apart from the mean. So for example, my friend mentioned that everyone has some sort of ADHD, everyone has mental disorder, and I said it wasn't true. Why is it a myth? Let me tell you by giving you an example. One of the most common tests used to diagnose ADHD is called the Conner's rating scales for ADHD. As you can see here, anything scored within 83rd percentile, which is actually within one standard deviation from the mean, is not considered as a problem yet. It is considered as the norm, because most people are within that range. However, about 84th to about 92nd percentile, which is about 1 to 1.5 standard deviations apart from the norm, or sigma 1 to 1.5 sigma apart, is considered mildly atypical. In this case, it is now considered as problematic or a disorder. 93rd to 97th percentile, which is about 1.5 to 2 standard deviations apart from the mean, is considered moderately problematic or moderate disorder. And lastly, 98th plus percentile, which is greater than 2 standard deviations or sigma apart from the means they have significant issues with ADHD. So what does this mean? In other words, some people might feel demotivated some days, they might have problem concentrating some days, they might feel forgetful some days. But if their symptoms do not exceed at least 85th percentile or one standard deviation from the mean or the range of the norm, they're not considered abnormal. They're considered as normal. So nope, they do not have ADHD. Not everyone has ADHD, and yes, no one is perfect, but not everyone has a mental disorder. So again, it's a myth. The second definition of deviance is deviates from the culture. For example, two legit disorders that exist in DSM-5 is called the conversion disorder or functional neurological symptom disorder. And the second one is DID or dissociative identity disorder. They are different disorders, but I would say they're pretty similar, but I'm not gonna talk about the difference in this video. In short, the term conversion disorder was coined by Sigmund Freud and Joseph Brauer in 1895 in their book called The Studies on Hysteria. They found that the most susceptible groups were the teenage girls living in rural communities, that developing countries, or poor populations that did not get proper educations, did not get the access to educations, thus known as the disorder for women. The gender ratio is actually pretty significant. It's actually 2-to-1 ratio, female to male. And the first documented case was actually their patient called Bertha Pappenheim or Anna O. They're actually the same person. The name Anna O was actually used to disguise the identity of the patient, or Bertha Pappenheim. But later, people eventually found out that Anna O's real name is actually Bertha Pappenheim. So she would experience temporary paralysis where she couldn't even move a muscle in her body. She would be like, she couldn't speak in her native language, which is Germany, but she would be very fluent in English and French. And she couldn't even drink water, even when she was very thirsty. However, when she went to see a neurologist for medical checkup, she was neurologically normal. There was even a juncture in the history when the majority of female patients seen by the neurologist experienced conversion hysteria. They were unable to speak in their native tongue. They were fainting. They would laugh. They would scream. They would not be able to drink, and so on and so forth. It even happened in a mass. This is definitely a disorder, especially in most cultures that have access to proper education. What about, say, in some rural areas in Indonesia where they did not get proper education? Would it be considered as a disorder? Now I'm going to show you a video that is legit from a legit Indonesian news. Let's watch it right now.
Sorotan lainnya, saudara, selama hampir 1 bulan, pelajar SMP 4 Banjarengkan, Kabupaten Kelungkung, Bali ini mengalami kesurupan massal. Imbasnya, proses belajar mengajar di sekolah terganggu. Pada Selasa kemarin, pihak sekolah berencana untuk menenangkan pelajar dengan mengajak semua pelajar mengikuti persembahyangan dengan tujuan mendapatkan ketenangan. Namun, sebelum selesai sembahyang, semua pelajar langsung berteriak-teriak sehingga harus dipindahkan ke ruang kelas untuk ditenangkan. Rata-rata siswa yang mengalami kerasukan adalah...
So, in this video, they were saying that they were trying to pray, they're trying to meditate to get peaceful mind, but in all sudden, they were starting to scream. They started to exhibit these behaviors that are also known as conversion hysteria in DSM-5.
Pelajar perempuan dari kelas 1 hingga kelas 3. Wakil Bupati Kelungkung Imade Kasta pun ikut membantu pihak sekolah untuk menenangkan para siswa.
Look at that girl right there. And dancing. Anyways, in that culture, in Indonesia, we call it kesurupan massal, or it literally means mass possession. As you can see, it actually is extremely similar with the definition and the study from Freud. It happens to females from rural area that didn't get access to proper education. And remember, the second definition of deviance means that it needs to deviate from the culture, the broadly accepted culture. Since this is something that is acceptable in Indonesia, that is pretty common, we call it kesurupan massal, which is mass possession. We don't really see conversion disorder as a legit disorder in Indonesia, or kesurupan massal as a mental disorder. For example, in Japan, there is this condition we call as hikikomori.